Welcome to College Football What Ifs, the series where we visit an alternate universe to find out what if the Bowl Coalition had a playoff. This program is presented by PSPN. We are always standing by. Well, welcome. This is the first episode in our College Football What If series. We had an episode 0, which you can visit by clicking the button in the top left. That video got away from us, but lessons learned, and we really tried to pare this down into a more manageable form. If you want to listen to me ramble on for an hour, take the link and have fun. The way these are going to work is I'll choose a college football what if. In this case, what if the Bowl Coalition had a playoff? And from there, we'll be using whatifsports.com to simulate the results. I will make all the off-field decisions following what I feel like are realistic outcomes, but all the on-field outcomes will be decided by RNGesus. To preserve impartiality, I will only be running one simulation for each matchup, and that's what happened. For pre-1996 what-ifs, there are some other issues that come into play, and I'll provide more information in the video description if you're interested. So the idea behind this series is that we wanted to investigate what an 8-team playoff might have looked like if the Bowl Coalition had instituted it back in the year 1992. The theory is that an 8-team playoff would have been devised consisting of the 7 major conference champions and Notre Dame, pitting them against each other. Similar to the real-life Bowl Coalition, the Rose Bowl, and therefore the Big Ten and Pac-10 champions, refused to participate. Not to be deterred, though, an 8-team tournament was still instituted, and the 2 at-large bids would come from the runners-up of 5 of the 7 conferences, plus the third-place team from the SEC. The SEC second place and the Big Ten runner-up teams would not be included, as they'd be tied into the Citrus Bowl. Before we jump into the games, let's run through the schedule real quick. So we're going to kick off the day down in Miami for the Orange Bowl, featuring number 1 Miami versus number 11 Nebraska. Directly following the Orange Bowl, we'll move on to the Superdome in New Orleans, where number 2 Alabama will take on number 10 Colorado in the Sugar Bowl. The action will then continue on to the Cotton Bowl, where number 4 Texas A&M will face number 5 Notre Dame. And finally, for the nightcap, we'll head out to Tempe, Arizona for the Fiesta Bowl, featuring number 3 Florida State and number 6 Syracuse. This would have been the biggest college football Saturday ever, and really an unprecedented event. Now, before we can jump in, there are some off-field events that must be discussed. And the games haven't even started, and the first blows are already being landed. Now, I don't think friendly fire is what we had in mind, but Texas A&M President William H. Mobley has just announced the suspension of star running back Greg Hill and 3 other Aggies for their Cotton Bowl matchup with Notre Dame. Published reports surfaced of inappropriate payments made by a benefactor to Texas A&M players. Dallas Morning News is reporting that a federal investigation has begun into the operations of Warren Gilbert, a director of the school's Letterman Association. Gilbert is also one of Dallas's largest operators of U.S. housing and urban development housing for low-income families. This is a huge blow for Texas A&M, as Greg Hill was the leader behind their 12-0 regular season, where he accumulated over 1,300 yards rushing. You gotta think A&M's gonna turn to Rodney Thomas. Thomas ran for over 900 yards and was a great complement to Hill's bruising style. Can he be the feature back? That is what we're gonna find out today in today's Cotton Bowl. Now, real quick, let's look at the numbers behind each game. Miami versus Nebraska. This is tied 4-4, but Miami has won the last 3, all in the Orange Bowl. And these 2 teams faced off last year on New Year's Day, where Miami won 22-0. Miami, the Big East champions, are 11-0, currently holding college football best 29-game win streak, their last loss coming on October 20th, 1990 against Notre Dame. They are led by the Heisman Trophy winner Gino Torretta, who threw for over 3,000 yards and 19 touchdowns. Now Nebraska, they're the Big 8 champs, entering the game at 9-2, led by legendary coach Tom Osborne and his all-out rushing attack. Nebraska is led by true freshman quarterback Tommy Frazier and a pair of 1,000-yard rushers in Derek Brown and Calvin Jones. Now, the key to today's game is Nebraska's running game. Nebraska averages 328 yards rushing per game, while Miami gives up 101 yards per game. Alabama versus Colorado. The series is tied with one win apiece. Alabama won the most recent matchup in last year's Blockbuster Bowl, 30-25. Alabama, the SEC champions, are 12-0 and hold a 22-game win streak. They're led by a suffocating defense that gave up 194 total yards per game. Colorado, the Big 8 runner-up, one of our at-large bids, is 9-1-1. They're led by sophomore quarterback Cordell Stewart and two 1,000-yard receivers, Charles Johnson and Michael Westbrook. The key to today's game is Colorado's receivers. Can they get open against an Alabama defense that gives up less than a 50% completion percentage to their opponents? Texas A&M versus Notre Dame. This is only the second meeting between the two teams, with A&M winning the first in the 1988 Cotton Bowl Classic, 35-10. Texas A&M, the Southwest Conference champions, are 12-0 and led by backup running back Rodney Thomas, who ran for 906 yards on the season. He will need to step up to fill the shoes of suspended running back Greg Hill. Notre Dame, at 9-1-1, is led by the rushing duo of Reggie Brooks and Jerome Bettis, who combined for more than 2,000 yards on the season. The key to today's game will be the Notre Dame rushing attack, who averages 281 yards per game. Texas A&M, on the other hand, they only give up 131 yards per game. Florida State versus Syracuse. Florida State leads the series 3-1, winner of the last three meetings, including last year's regular season matchup in Tallahassee, 46-14. Syracuse's only win in the series came in 1966. Florida State, your ACC champions, enter today's game 11-1 with their lone loss, a 2-point loss to Miami. They're led by All-American quarterback Charlie Ward. The point guard turned quarterback has thrown for 2,600 yards and 22 touchdowns on the season. Now Syracuse, they're your Big East runner-up. That's your other at-large bid. They enter today's game at 9-2. They are led by quarterback Marvin Graves and his top target Quadre Ishmael, better known as the Missile. The key to today's game is turnovers. Florida State has been plagued by turnovers all year, with Charlie Ward throwing 17 interceptions. While Syracuse's defense, on the other hand, has been very opportunistic, accounting for 24 interceptions. They will be looking to feast on any errant throws tonight. What an exciting day of action. Let's break it all down. Let's start with the Orange Bowl. We're here at the 59th Orange Gold Bowl game. The Miami Hurricanes take the field. Miami unveiled brand new uniforms tonight. Coach Dennis Erickson told us that this is what everyone will be wearing in about 25 years. Nebraska, on the other hand, is looking to upset the top-ranked Hurricanes, and they will need true freshman Tommy Frazier to have a hell of a game to make that happen. And on the first play of the game, Tommy Frazier does what only he can do. He runs over the defensive end and scampers down the left sideline for 67 yards, getting pushed out of bounds at the 10-yard line. In reality, Frazier makes a pretty poor read here. He should have handed it off to the fullback, but Frazier rectifies this pretty quick. Now, there is a slight problem, though, as the play was called back for a face mask on Lance Lewis. Nebraska would then go 3 and out. Later in the first, Nebraska would get on the board first when Byron Bennett nails a 27-yard field goal to give Nebraska a 3-0 lead in the first quarter. On to the second, scores tied 3-3. Miami would finally get things rolling. Gino Torretta finds Jonathan Harris on the outside. He makes the first man miss and heads down the sideline for a 42-yard gain, getting it all the way down to the 19-yard line. The very next play, Torretta would locate his top target, Lamar Thomas, to score the game's first touchdown. Thomas makes a great move on All-American cornerback Kenny Wilhite, and Torretta fires a laser to give Miami the lead. Miami's defense did a great job in the first half containing the Cornhusker rushing attack. Finally, late in the second, Calvin Jones would finally get just enough room to get Nebraska into field goal range. And Bennett would once again connect, this time from 53 yards out as time expired, to cut the Miami lead to 10-6 at halftime. Nebraska would drive right down the field to start the third, and Calvin Jones would punch it in from 1 yard out to give Nebraska a 13-10 lead. Later in the third, score tied, Torretta finds Coleman Bell for a 17-yard gain. Torretta takes a massive hit on this play by defensive tackle John Perella. He would appear to be shaken up, but would stay in the game. Coleman Bell, on the other hand, would leave the game after taking his own ringer right here from Kenny Wilhite. Bell would re-enter the game 3 plays later and would get open on 3rd and 11, picking up 17 yards. Bell shows great extension to secure this catch and give Miami another set of downs. A few plays later, Toretta would find Harris on 2nd and goal for a 1-yard touchdown. The athleticism and body control was remarkable as Harris slips between 2 Nebraska defenders to make the score 20-13. Now, later in the 4th, after Nebraska had cut the lead to 4, Miami, trying to run out the clock, would go to sophomore running back Donnell Bennett. Bennett had a massive day, racking up over 220 all-purpose yards. With the season on the line, Bennett carried Miami right down the field before capping off the drive with a 2-yard touchdown run, putting Miami up 27-16. Now, Nebraska, needing to score quick, would go with a little trickeration here on 4th and 12, but Miami sniffs it out and would tackle Derek Brown in the backfield, and that would do it. Miami is your 1992 Orange Bowl champions. They are one step closer to being named back-to-back national champions for the first time since Alabama did it in 1978 and 1979. Well, we turned in to watch the Heisman Trophy winner Gino Toretta, who had a so-so day, completing 20 of 32 for 214 and 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions. We left impressed with sophomore running back Donnell Bennett, who ended up with 33 touches for 222 total yards. Nebraska just had no answer for him. They obviously were prepared for Miami's aerial attack and contained Lamar Thomas fairly well. I give Nebraska credit. They hung with Miami for most of the day and pulled within 4 with 7 minutes to go, but they just didn't have a way to move the ball quickly down the field. Nebraska was just too one-dimensional over there. Now, let's head out to the Sugar Bowl. Welcome to the 58th Sugar Bowl. The undefeated Crimson Tide are looking to extend their perfect season and win a trip to the Cotton Bowl next week. Colorado is out to prove they belong in this tournament. Alabama started fast, with Derek Lasik finding some running room to the outside for 19 yards. A couple plays later, Jay Baker connects with tight end Steve Buskey, who breaks a tackle and gets Alabama inside the 15-yard line. Lasik would then go on to punch it in from inside the 5 to give Alabama the early 7-0 lead. Now, Alabama's defense played a near-perfect game in the first quarter, completely sniffing out the Colorado offense. All-American John Copeland was unblockable today, notching 2 tackles for loss and a sack. Alabama would get things rolling again in the second, with Jay Baker finding Buskey once again. Buskey would rumble down the field for 37 more yards. When Jay Baker can make off-schedule plays like this, Alabama's offense is nearly unstoppable. The Crimson Tide would settle for a field goal by Michael Proctor to extend their lead to 10-0. Late in the second, Colorado would finally get some momentum. The Alabama defense would not make it easy, though, as Cordell Stewart would have to fire between 2 defenders to connect with sophomore Eric Mitchell. Mitchell seemed to be surprised to catch the ball as well. Had he caught it cleanly, he may have gone all the way. Stewart would then find tight end Christian Faria over the middle. Alabama is not making it easy, but Stewart is finding the holes on this drive, small as they may be. On the very next play, Stewart would find Charles Johnson behind the defense. This was a marvelous pass by Stewart. He struggled with accuracy this year, but on that drive he was pinpoint. The extra point makes it 10-7 going into the half. Moving on to the third, Colorado is on the move again as Stewart finds TJ Cunningham over the middle, fitting it in just over the Tide. Stewart has picked up right where he left off in the first half. Three plays later, Stewart would find Faria behind the defense, taking the Buffaloes down to the 3-yard line. Nothing fancy by Faria here, he just slips down the field and Stewart catches George Teed with his eyes in the backfield. On 2nd and goal, the toss will go to Hill, who breaks to the outside and then wins the race to the pylon. That gives Colorado their first lead of the game, 14-10. That lead would not last long, though, as Jay Baker would find his running back Derek Lasik behind Deion Figures for the 39-yard touchdown. That makes the score 17-14. On to the fourth quarter. Colorado would go back to Hill, who refused to go down here, picking up 11 on 3rd and 3. Now this would set up Pat Blattier's 46-yard field goal. The line drive kick would sneak just inside the left upright, tying the game up 17-17 with 12 minutes to play. Later in the fourth, Alabama would go back to Derek Lasik, who would not disappoint, as he would drag Colorado defenders all the way down to the 12-yard line. The 57-yard gain would set up Chris Bell, who would dive in from the 6-yard line. This puts Alabama back on top, 24-17, with 4 minutes left to play. The following drive, needing a first down on 3rd and 3, James Hill would make an amazing move to cut it up to get the first down. It was then that disaster would strike. John Copeland, who lived in the backfield all game, would bust through, again forcing a Stewart fumble. Luckily, Colorado would recover, but it would set up a 3rd and 12 with about 3 minutes to play. Stewart would then drop back and hit Charles Johnson on a quick hitch, but Johnson would blast Antonio Langham, picking up the first down and more. This group of Colorado receivers are playing with so much confidence tonight, and they seem determined to do whatever it takes. With time running out, Stewart would once again find his tight end Christian Faria, who would split 2 defenders and race his way down for a 25-yard touchdown, tying the game up at 24 with just over a minute to play. The game would end in a 24-24 tie, but we need a winner to move on in this playoff. So for the first time in major college football history, we will be playing overtime. To determine a winner, both teams will take turns starting at the 25-yard line going into score. If the game is still tied after 2 overtimes, 2-point conversions will be required and we will play until we have a winner. Alabama would win the coin toss and elect for Colorado to go first. On 2nd and 5 from the 20, Colorado would go old school option football and catch Alabama off guard, allowing Hill to take it in for the score. Just a great play call here. Colorado revamped their offense in the offseason, moving away from the QB option game to a more vertical passing game, and running it here was just the perfect time. Now Alabama gets their chance. On 2nd and 5, Baker would run play action, but he couldn't find anyone open and would be sacked for a 7-yard loss. On 3rd and 12, he'd drop back again, but the protection would break down and Leonard Renfro would force Baker out of the pocket and would drag him down for another 4-yard loss. This would set up 4th and 16 from the 31. The season on the line. Baker would drop back to pass and just couldn't find an open receiver as Renfro would get him once again, and that's going to do it. Colorado would walk away with a 31-24 overtime victory. Colorado will move on to the semifinals. I think they proved tonight that they deserve to be there. And if Cordell Stewart can play like this going forward, Colorado will be a tough out for anyone. The first major college football playoff, followed by the first look at overtime in major college football history. Both teams were executing at a high level, but Colorado found a way to finish this one off in overtime. Sophomore quarterback Cordell Stewart looks like a superstar in the making, and if he plays like he did today, then Colorado can beat anyone in the country. Now, it's important to remember that Stewart didn't play in that Halloween matchup with Nebraska. That was Colorado's only loss on the season. Colorado was always a wild card due to their youth, but after taking down number 2 Alabama, they should feel confident with anyone they face. Now let's head out to Dallas for the Cotton Bowl. And it's the 57th Cotton Bowl Classic here in Dallas, Texas, as Texas A&M and Notre Dame take the field. And we're off. Notre Dame would get the ball first. Rick ball on the 27. Meyer stares down his receiver and throws it right to the clutches of Marcus Buckley. Buckley sat on that one and would hold Notre Dame to no points. The The very next drive, Notre Dame inside the 10-yard line, Meyer would hold on to the ball too long, as the Texas A&M defense would not just get to him, fumble as well, recovering the ball for the second straight Notre Dame turnover. Later in the first, Notre Dame went driving once again, and they would finally finish this drive as Meyer would find Reggie Brooks in the end zone for a 5-yard score. They would miss the extra point, making it 6-0 at the end of one. Moving on to the second, Rick Meyer would find Michael Miller over the middle to keep the ball moving on third down as he secures the catch and takes a big hit from the defense. Notre Dame would then go to their Heisman finalist Reggie Brooks on the toss. He'd get to the outside, race down the sideline for a 50-yard gain. This would set up a 39-yard field goal by Craig Hentrop, putting Notre Dame up 9-0. Texas A&M would finally get their power run game moving in the second by the way of Rodney Thomas, whose tough between the tackles running was reminiscent of suspended star running back Greg Hill. Corey Pulig would finally connect with Ryan Matthews to move on to Notre Dame's side of the field for the first time all game. Texas A&M would finish this drive with a 38-yard field goal by Terry Vinatulis, making the score 9-3. The next drive, Notre Dame would go play action on 3rd and 4, and Meyer would find his tight end Irv Smith Sr. on the right sideline for a first down. Unfortunately for Texas A&M, the replay showed that Smith Sr. was out of bounds. 2 plays later, Meyer would find Jerome Bettis sneaking out of the backfield, who would break a tackle and get the ball down inside the 20. Just 3 plays later, Bettis would punch it in from 1 yard out to put Notre Dame up 16-3. Texas A&M would knock in another field goal, going into halftime down 16-6. Later in the third, now down 19-6, A&M would get another drive going, once again riding Rodney Thomas. Thomas was a handful to bring down, and as it seemed like he broke multiple tackles on every run he attempted. Now, down inside the 30, Texas A&M runs the option as Pulig gets the pitch off at the last second, and Thomas is able to take the ball down inside the 15 for another A&M first down. Just a really gutsy play by Pulig to draw the defenders, take the hit, and still deliver a perfect pitch. The very next play, they go to Thomas again as he would bounce to the outside and follow his blockers into the end zone to pull within 6 of Notre Dame. Notre Dame would extend the lead back to 9 with another field goal in the fourth before Pulig would scramble to his left and take off for a 23-yard run. They then go to the play action where Pulig would find Matthews over the middle as Matthews makes a diving catch. Amazing concentration as Matthews pulls in the one-handed catch, giving Texas A&M a new set of downs. Going back to the play action once again, Pulig would put in a beauty of pass with perfect placement to Tony Harris to get A&M down inside the 10-yard line. Pulig, a true freshman, has struggled this year, but this ball was placed perfectly right over the linebacker. The next play, Thomas would do the rest as he would weave his way into the end zone, pulling Texas A&M within 2 with a little over 7 minutes to play. Notre Dame would tack on another field goal, extending their lead to 5 with just over 3 minutes left, meaning A&M would need to go the length of the field and score a touchdown if they wanted to preserve their perfect season. They would drive all the way down to the Notre Dame 35, where, facing 4th and 6, Pulig would roll out and find Harris past the sticks, but he dropped it. One more look shows the ball hit him in the chest, but he can't bring it in, and that will do it as Notre Dame holds off Texas A&M to win 25-20. The Fighting Irish will head to the Orange Bowl to face Miami on New Year's Day in what will be a much anticipated semifinal matchup. Another great game with a furious finish. Texas A&M effectively shut down the Notre Dame rushing attack, holding them to less than 100 yards rushing. Notre Dame had to turn to Rick Meyer, and fortunately for the Irish, he had a career game, completing 24 of 30 for 314 and a touchdown. On the other side, the Aggie running game couldn't get much going either, and while true freshman quarterback Corey Pulig played valiantly, he finished with 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. You have to think that the loss of Greg Hill greatly affected A&M here today. This will be one of the great what-ifs for the Aggies going forward. You have to give props to Notre Dame, though. They played well and held firm when they needed to the most. Now, Notre Dame, they're going to head out to Miami and the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day for the semifinal matchup. Miami and Notre Dame have been sort of rivals in recent years and have played some great games. We should fully expect an entertaining matchup. Now, for our final game of the night, let's head out to Tempe, Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl. Syracuse and Florida State are both taking the field here at Sun Devil Stadium here in Tempe, Arizona. Syracuse unveiling some new helmets featuring a Block S as opposed to their typical unadorned orange domes. We will see if it brings them some good fortune tonight. Syracuse got the ball first, and right away Marvin Graves connects with Antonio Johnson, who breaks the tackle and takes it down to the Florida State 35. On the following play, Graves finds Shelby Hill for a 13-yard gain and another first down. Syracuse would settle for a 26-yard field goal by John Biscup, but they gotta feel good about that start, driving right down the field against this talented Florida State defense. Florida State would respond right away as Charlie Ward would find speedster Tamarick Vanover streaking down the right sideline. That would take Florida State inside the Syracuse 30. A couple plays later, Tiger McMillan would break outside and take the ball inside the 10. But there was a flag on the play. They caught senior Shannon Baker on this one, as he was well behind the play and took an unnecessary shot at the Syracuse defenseman. Now backed up on 3rd and 17, Ward drops back and takes a sack. Linebacker Garland Hawkins comes on the blitz up the middle and gets to Ward to knock them out of field goal range. At this point, the game became a defensive struggle as both teams would struggle to move the ball. Florida State's defense, led by Marvin Jones, really tightened up after that first drive, sacking Graves 3 times in the first half. It wasn't until midway through the third quarter that Graves would lead Syracuse back into Florida State territory, where they would once again settle for a Biscup field goal. On the other side, Florida State was struggling to get anything going, as Syracuse seemed to have an answer at every turn, and they made Ward very uncomfortable, and they would be held scoreless in the first half. Syracuse would head to the locker room up 6-0 at halftime. Finally, in the third quarter, Florida State would show some life, as Ward escapes the pocket and finds Kes McCorvey down the right sideline for a pickup of 41 yards. It was really what Florida State needed, a big play to jumpstart the offense. Ward would then find Vanover on the hitch to get the ball inside the 10-yard line. The Seminoles were unable to punch it in, though, as they would settle for a short field goal by Dan Mowry. On the next drive, Ward, trying to keep the momentum going, would scramble to the right and take off, but then he gets hit and he loses the ball and Syracuse recovers. Ward has been frustrated all day, and here he was just trying to do too much, and it cost him. Luckily, the Florida State defense would hold and get Ward the ball back, where he settled down and went back to work, finding Vanover once again, who would break a tackle and get Florida State back inside the Syracuse 10-yard line. This is the Florida State offense we've seen all year with Ward, making decisive throws to his receivers and letting them do their thing, breaking tackles and getting the yards after catch. Syracuse defense would hold strong once again, though, getting a sack and once again forcing a field goal by Mowry. That will tie the game up 6-6 as we start the fourth. Now in the fourth, Syracuse up 9-6 and looking to ice the game. Graves would find Little U's reserve receiver Marvin Harrison for the first down on 3rd and 9. Graves would then find his favorite target, Quadri Ishmael, the Missile, to get the ball into Florida State territory. Missile has been held in check today, but here he is making plays when Syracuse needed them the most. Syracuse would finally get in the end zone later on the drive as Graves would find David Walker sneaking out of the backfield for a 6-yard touchdown. This is huge for Syracuse as it puts them up 16-6 with just a little over 4 minutes to play. Needing to score quick, Florida State would go back to the air, but Syracuse would get pressure on Ward, once again forcing a bad pass which would be picked off by Garland Hawkins. Hawkins saw it all the way, stepping in front of Shannon Baker to grab the game-clinching interception. Syracuse would tack on one more field goal, making the score 19-6 as Syracuse pulls off the upset of number 3 Florida State, stifling one of the best offenses in the country. Syracuse will move on to the Cotton Bowl to face Colorado on New Year's Day for a chance to head to the first ever college football playoff finals. If any result was surprising today, this was probably it. We were expecting a shootout and got a defensive struggle. Florida State was held to 95 yards rushing and 128 yards passing, and the most telling stat on the day was their 1 out of 15 mark on 3rd down. Syracuse's defense did what no one else could do, and that was to totally baffle the Florida State offense. Charlie Ward looked lost out there today. Martin had a decent game throwing for 285 yards, but credit goes to the defense on this one. Defense wins championships, as the saying goes. Syracuse will head out to face Colorado in the other semifinal matchup on New Year's Day in Dallas, Texas. I think most people were expecting an Alabama-Florida State matchup. Instead, Marvin Graves and Cordell Stewart will battle it out in the Cotton Bowl for the shot at the national championship. Now that'll do it for tonight. The action was hot and heavy, and we saw some stunning upsets and unexpected overtime battles. Next up will be the New Year's Day semifinal matchup, where we will determine who will play in the first ever Bowl Coalition National Championship. Thank you for joining me on this journey. The next episode will feature the semifinal matchups as we continue our journey to figure out what if the Bowl Coalition had a playoff. This has been PSPN. We are always standing by.